And I'm back. This time not with Kira, but with Tamtam. Nicole,
Yes, a
hello.
live gastrodon over here. Hello,
Yes,
hello.
that's kind of crazy, honestly. Gastrodon Plish in the sunflower field, and we are back with some spike muff action this time. Last game we brought Series 13. This time we're gonna bring the no dynamics spike muff action, and let's have a look at the teams without further ado. I would say. Or
Yes, it will be the Holy Heat versus the Sunsteel Strikers, as we see here, and we'll be covering JamieKean versus Duckpond this time.
Mhm.
So as you can see, I mean, at the moment these two teams are tied, so this might be a deciding match.
Yeah, it honestly might be, because right now, just like in the last game, Jonas and Polar Bear are playing, so we will probably have an idea about what's going on right after the game. So I'm really excited. I would
Yes,
say
very
let's
exciting
have a
to
look.
be sure.
Yeah, let's have a look at the players. We have JamieKean walking a team of um, a Porygon, a Raconite, Incineroar, Amoonguss, and Willaboom. So a Trick Room core going on there, and with a fast mode in Regieleki as well.
Yes, so JamieKean is an interesting player. My experience with him has been that he tends to prefer rather innovative teams. But when I look at this particular team, the one that he's bringing here, I get the impression that he's going for something more balanced this time. And in particular, the Porygon 2 Araquanid core really harkens back to like the VGC 17 days. So curious to see that as well. And then we also have stuff like him doubling up on grass types with Amoonguss and Rillaboom, presumably because, he values Amoonguss quite a bit. And, a lot of teams, I think, in this format might not be able to deal with it that well, especially with that, the sleep pressure if they don't have a Finny, for example. So interesting team to be sure.
Yeah, but we do see a Pokemon that handles the Amoonguss quite well in Duckpond's team, being that Ninetales Alola that obviously threatens it with big damage from the Blizzard. And another really interesting team because the Pokemon itself, the six Pokemon are rather common, but not in this particular combination. We see the Incineroar, Urshifu, and Serena as a Firewater Grass core with the Celesteela, Landorus, and Ninetales Alola. So this team is really fast without too much obvious speed control, but it has those balanced cores, which allows it to defensively switch pretty nicely.
Yes, Celesteela is a particular favorite of mine, and that is a Pokemon that goes really, really well with ground types since its only weaknesses are, well, fire and electric, and those ground types are able to deal with those fire and electric mons. So we do see a bit of that with the Steel Orlando core and Upland's team.
Yeah, and the two players itself are known to the community as well. I mean, if you have a look at the accomplishments, you see that JamieKean already is a 3 times worlds competitor. So yeah,
Yes, he's
definitely.
quite an old-time player. He started way back in 2015, I believe, and he did very well at those nationals. And then he's also gone on, as you said, quite involved in the community. He's been an NPA manager. I played him for the first time in 2017 at a regional, and I told him that his team sucks, but he plays really well, and he will probably never let me live that down. Understandably.
Oh yeah, you don't forget those people. Yeah, and Duckpond as well in the 2020 format with the Players Cup, he managed to reach Global Finals top 8 in Series 5 and EU Finals EU Finals, I think it was called like that, top 12 in Series 7. So he definitely knows what's going on with those new Gen 8 Pokemon, and I'm excited to see how he will adapt with no Dynamax button available.
Yes, I agree. An up and coming player, a bit of a rising star. But without further ado, I think let's get into the match.
Yeah, I'm excited for it.
Me as well. So let's see how these players lead off here.
Yeah.
You soon as it appears. Oh, there we go. There we go. A slight hiccup. And it looks like Duckpond is going with that Steela Incineroar. Leading with the Celesteela is an interesting choice, while JamieKean leads off with Aleki and Porygon 2. So I would say that, this Incineroar's Intimidate is not going to be particularly useful unless JamieKean has a surprise physical Aleki, which is not impossible, I suppose. But in the meantime, that Steela is quite threatened as well.
Yeah. I mean, the fake out in the Reggie slot is quite obvious here, so it will be interesting to see whether he goes for something like a Protect here, or if he tries to predict it early on. The Porygon 2, he could set up the Trick Room, but with the Reggie out, he probably wants to do some bit of chip damage early on and then go for the Trick Room afterwards to sweep with his slow Pokemon, because Reggie obviously doesn't appreciate the Trick Room too much. You do see the switch here.
Yes, indeed. He switches out the Porygon 2 for Incineroar, so no Trick Room going up, and as you mentioned, the Regieleki is just gonna go for an obvious but safe Protect. Fake out goes into... What?
Okay, sorry.
No worries. Meteor Beam from the Celesteela, though, going into that Incineroar slot, perhaps? We will see.
I mean, if it does, it will be an awesome position for Duckpond, probably.
But it goes into Aleki. So what do you think about this upcoming turn?
Well, now the momentum suddenly shifted to JamieKean, because now he has the fake out pressure, while Celesteela is now threatened by an attack. And the problem about Duckpond is he doesn't have the Rillaboom, so he can't really switch out the Incineroar into another fake out, go for a Protect again on the Celesteela, and then have fake out pressure. So the Celesteela is kind of pinned here. It is at the +1 special attack stage, so you kinda want the Celesteela to stick around and attack, but it's threatened by the Aleki.
Yes, and we see that Volt Switch go into the Celesteela. I'm not entirely sure how good that is for Keen here, because now he's losing some of that pressure he had onto it, right? But here we see it Volt Switch out into a Rillaboom, which again, it's not gonna be able to, for example, glide with the Serena out if it wanted to do that. But the Incineroar U-turn, so he might just go back into the Aleki. This could be a good play, actually.
With the Protect, he just hard with the Protect, maybe anticipating a parting shot or a hard switch of the Incineroar going off. And I mean, now the position suddenly looks great again. Right, because if you look at Duckpond's team, he doesn't really have a great switch into Reggie, especially if it's paired with a Rillaboom, because the Rillaboom will take care of the Landos that's potentially stopping it.
Yes, indeed. The Lando could be a bit of a problem for the Rillaboom, since they do tend to carry Slag Bomb, for example, but overall I agree with you. The Thunderbolt's pressure from this Aleki is huge, but we simply see Duckpond switch the Serena out into Incineroar. And it will be curious to see what these Pokemon go for next. It looks like a Thunderbolt from the Aleki straight into that Celesteela. Oh, but it actually lives. Amazing.
Oh, wow. I mean, maybe this is... I would assume that this is probably damage calc, because the most Alekis tend to be Sash rather than Life Orb or Magnet. I think you have to invest a lot of EVs to live a Life Orb run, so you probably just said, okay, you know what? My defensive calc will just be that I live a Sash Reggie Aleki attack, and I mean, it's working out for him quite well here.
Yes, I agree. That survival was quite surprising, but now that Celesteela is perhaps not gonna get another chance to move this game, because the Aleki is still in the field with full health, and if it is that Sash item, as you mentioned, that Sash is still intact. The Incineroar on JamieKean's side is out here again, and I don't believe we've seen these Incineroar speed stats revealed relative to each other. So we're like, it's possible that JamieKean could fake out Duckpond's Incineroar, or even the other way around.
Yeah. The thing is, now that the Celesteela has to stick around for a turn, the Aleki kinda has as well, but we don't see a Protector of the Celesteela here, so Reggie Aleki can Volt Switch out, still keep the Sash intact, which puts on a lot of pressure on Duckpond. Like, you really see the strength of Reggie Aleki, this frail Pokemon that's only able to dish out electric type moves. Still, like it's working so well for him.
Yes, and JamieKean's been pivoting a lot this game, and it's been working out for him. We see another pivot with the Aleki vault switching out into P2. Duckpond responding with some pivoting of his own, parting shotting the P2 into. Let's see what comes in here.
Maybe we get to see the 4th Pokemon here.
Yes, or perhaps it's just the Serena again. Who knows? It's the Serena, it appears, and then on the other side, perhaps he goes back into the Incineroar or finally reveals that 4th Pokemon, though I would hazard a guess that it is not the Landorus, because that would have been able to switch into the Aleki, and it seems like he's been unwilling to do that.
Yeah, that's true. He probably thought that he will not have enough damage against the Porygon, and he needs like the Urshifu as a fighting type Pokemon. He probably wanted to bring the Celesteela because it is kind of slow against JamieKean's slow team, still able to outspeed those Pokemon, so it can dish out a lot of damage. And he maybe thought something like, you know what, I have the Landorus, maybe it scares away the Regieleki on its own. Serena as well, most of the time carrying this Assault Dress, so it doesn't really take too much damage from the Regieleki as well. But JamieKean, being really smart about this, brought his Eleki, and I mean, we see that it already brought him ahead in the game a lot.
Yes, and we see him switching out the Incineroar into that Rillaboom. He's really getting good use out of that pivoting core there. The close combat from the Urshifu goes into the P2, and as you mentioned, this is essentially, presumably, his P2 answer. Despite it making him rather weak to that Regieleki, it seems like Duckpond decided that indeed he just needs this to be able to get rid of that P2. The Serena also pivoting out with a U-turn into that Incineroar, which is now gonna lower the attack stat of that Rillaboom, which might actually come into play given it would otherwise threaten that Urshifu. And finally, the P2 just going with an Ice Beam into what used to be the Serena slot, but is now an Incineroar that takes basically no damage at all.
Yeah, I mean, this was really clever by Duckpond, really clever play. So he got a lot of damage into the Porygon. He still threatens a new switch in with Serena, so Rillaboom can't really freely, without reads involved, go for a Grassy Glide, right? And Porygon actually not opting for the Trick Room here, which would have been, I think, kind of nice for the Porygon to go slower now, go to slower, underspeed the Urshifu. But yeah, I mean, as I already said, if you bring the Regieleki, you probably don't really want to go for the Trick Room because it's always this weird feeling of I still have the Regieleki in the back. I kind of can get in a situation where I have to stall out my own Trick Room. We do see a really interesting move on Urshifu here. What do you think about that one?
It's going for a substitute, which I agree is incredibly interesting, and it also makes me think, like, if Kean had brought that Amoonguss, this Urshifu could have, it could have avoided those spores with that substitute tech, so that's quite cool.
Yeah.
And it appears like Kean is pivoting out into that Aleki, perhaps? He's not quite sure. Yes, it looks like it's gonna be that Aleki. The Aleki threatening basically everything on Duckpond's team other than the Serena, but the Serena is low enough at this point that a Thunderbolt will likely pick up the KO. Flare Blitz picking up a KO, speaking of that, on the P2 this time, which will allow JamieKean a free switch into a Pokemon of his choice.
Yeah, but the interesting thing you have now is that the substitute might be even game-winning because, JamieKean didn't want to go for the Grassy Glide because of the Serena switch and that's possible. He went for the U-turn, so substitute's still intact. He can now freely switch into the Serena and threaten a KO on the Aleki slot because there's only Aleki and Incineroar left, right? So he will live. He will live the electric attack, obviously, for the substitute. He can't protect through it, so the substitute is just really, really great for him. Duckpond still has to keep in mind to keep his Incineroar around for the Rillaboom afterwards. So it's still not decided. I mean, I think it's a pretty even situation now, other than the, I would say, pretty commanding situation it was before. So it suddenly got a lot it's only gotten exciting basically.
Yes, I agree. That substitute has changed a lot here. It looks like the Urshifu is going to go for a protect, perhaps fearing a double up from Keen, which would have picked up the KO. But Keen, he does Volt Switch into the protect. But at the same time, the Rillaboom gets to go for a high horsepower into that Incineroar, and it picks up the KO thanks to that Choice Band item, most likely. So now that leaves Duckpond in a slightly tricky position regardless. With the Serena, the only Mon left on his team, it may be able to block those theoretical grassy glides, but with the Rillaboom locked into high horsepower at the moment, it's not gonna matter much.
Yeah, I think it's still not it's still not over because as you said, Rillaboom is locked, so Rillaboom probably has to switch out. Urshifu still has its substitute intact, so the Reggie is not able to counter the Urshifu here. But on the other hand, of course, the Serena will be at -1 once it is able to hit the Rillaboom with its triple axis. And yeah, I think it will come down to whether or not, to how much bulk the Serena has, if it's able to live a Choice Band Woodhammer even in the end. So we will see how the next turns play out. Probably the Electri, I expect the Electri to go down here, but not without breaking the sub of Urshifu.
Yeah, and it looks like Aleki is simply Volt Switching out, so it will definitely survive at least one turn, I suppose. But there is the question of whether or not the Rillaboom survives here. There is the risk for a potential double up from Duckpond here, so curious to see if he goes for that or if he perhaps makes a different kind of play. Surging Strikes from the Urshifu will be going into the Aleki slot, which is now a Rillaboom, and it's gonna tank that quite well, even with those triple critical hits.
Yeah, actually, a lot of clever pivoting going out, and you see that Duckpond kind of went for the obvious player, I would say. Didn't think about this switching going on, and yeah, this is a prime example of why Rillaboom and Incineroar are so good, because they both offer not only fake out but also the pivoting move in U-turn and potting shot, while also complementing their weaknesses really well, or their strength rather.
Yes, and looking at what JamieKean lucked in for this turn, it seems like he really wants to get rid of that Serena, perhaps so that he's finally able to actually go for those grassy glides with his Rillaboom, locking into that U-turn and Flare Blitz into it, which with a double up is definitely gonna get a KO, maybe even, just the U-turn is enough thanks to that Choice Band item again. And here we will get to see Keen pivot back out into that Aleki, which is still at full health with a sash intact. Maybe not terribly relevant against the Surging Strikes Urshifu though.
I mean, it is relevant that he kept his Aleki around for so long and alive, and like, I mean, with a lot of health because of the Aqua Chat, obviously. So it's really impressive to see it that much pivoting. You see the Porygon taking a lot of damage, tanking a lot of damage. Like, I think it was only 2 attacks, but like those attacks were really crucial in that regard, because Duckpond was kind of forced to throw the attacks at the Porygon and not the Regieleki sitting next to it. So yeah, really well played by JamieKean here. The Urshifu substitute real sadly was not enough to dish out a win for Duckpond here.
Yes, and Duckpond sees that he's lost this match and simply forfeits. Probably a wise decision at that point. It was a quite commanding lead for JamieKean with 3 mons to Duckpond's Soul Urshifu at this point. So, what sort of adjustments would you like to see?
Yeah, I mean, you still have those mind games going on, right? Because obviously you kind of want to bring the Landovers now, because the Aleki was so destructive for you. But what if your opponent just decides to maybe go for a, let's say, a Mungus now and a more Trick Room heavy mode, you know? So it kind of gets tough now, because you want to have enough against this Aleki, because this time it wasn't enough. but then again, it's kind of hard if the opponent just decides to not bring a Lecky, because he can basically do whatever you want. The pressure is on the losing player in game 2, I would say.
Yes, I have to agree that Landorus looks very tempting with Lecky on the team, and just my personal experience playing against Lecky is that if there is a Lecky on the team and you have a ground type, you really want to be bringing that ground type, because if you don't, that Lecky is probably going to go crazy, which we kind of saw in that game 1. So curious to see if we do see Kean going for that Trick Room mode perhaps in game 2 as a response to a potential Landorus bring, and we'll be going straight into it.
I mean, the choice band Rillaboom as well looks really tough for Duckpond to beat. The Assault Vest Incineroar kind of adds salt to the wound as well, because Landorus is normally really great against an Incineroar, but with an Assault Vest, Incineroar will be able to tank this Earth powers going around. So we do see a really great lead for JamieKean here, I would say. Because
both players adjusting a bit here. They were bringing Pokemon they had in game 1, but they are leading differently. So we see Incineroar and Urshifu in the lead for Duckpond this time, while Kean leads with Rillaboom and Porygon 2, as opposed to that Alecki lead in game 1. So straight off the bat, actually I should perhaps ask you, what do you think is going to happen here?
No, I mean, this lead kind of indicated to me, and now it's confirmed that we saw it for Pokemon, that he decided to not bring the Alecki this time, but go for the Trick Room mode, which we discussed basically in between games. So yeah, this will be interesting, because this game will probably play out way differently than the game before, just because of those different Pokemon that were brought.
Yes, and it looks like Duckpond really wants to get rid of that P2 going straight for the close combat, but there is a good reason for the P2 to set up the Trick Room this time with that Araquanid in the back, so we might see JamieKean go for that play, especially with him switching to Incineroar to ensure that P2 survives, and indeed, it does get to set up that Trick Room quite safely.
Yeah, I mean, the Incineroar switching was really great here for Jamie. Like reducing the damage of both of the opponent's Pokemon, the Porygon now being able to survive, set up the Trick Room, and now you can basically pivot into your strong sweeper, which will probably be the Araquanid. If you look at Duckpond's team, he doesn't really have a way to deal with the Araquanid that well, right? It's just, of course, it's tough for Araquanid if it doesn't carry a bug type move to deal with this arena, but if it does, it looks really hard, because Urshifu can't deal damage to Araquanid, because Araquanid just resists both steps.
Yes, Araquanid is a pretty interesting, you could say, counter meta pick at this point, and it's got that fantastic synergy with the P2 as well. So we did see JamieKean lock into that U-turn and can quite safely U-turn out into that Araquanid, since, as you mentioned, the Urshifu can't really touch it, and neither can Incineroar or even probably the Tsareena. So U-turn comes out, probably going to do a chunk to Tsareena. Yes, almost 50%.
Yeah, I mean, U-turn, normally I would argue that U-turn isn't as great as parting shot, and you have to go for it, because if you decide to go for the Assault Vest on your Incineroar, but I mean, if the U-turn goes into a Tsareena, then I think you shouldn't complain. Yeah, really great. And now we have this really strong Pokemon on the field with Araquanid threatening the -2 Urshifu or the Tsareena, and the Porygon, which I mean is borderline unkillable right now with the current state of the field.
Yes.
Yeah, really interesting stuff.
Yes, as you mentioned, that Urshifu is -2 after close combating so much, and the Porygon 2 is just tanking them, recovering each turn, and it does appear like JamieKean is gonna attempt to attack into that Urshifu slot, but Duckpond, wisely knowing that at this point the Urshifu is rather threatened, goes into Incineroar, perhaps also to lower the damage output of that Araquanid with the Intimidate.
I want to see how much damage this does.
It's gonna do a chunk.
-1? It's not going to do enough, but I mean, it still did a lot of damage.
Yes, Incineroar eating its Citrus Berry here, though. and it's almost at 50% at this point, which is, it's gonna survive the turn at least. Try attack. Ooh, the paralysis. There is a chance that this will matter. It could block a fake out, for example. And power up from this arena in grassy terrain deals a lot of damage actually to the Araquanid. Not quite as safe as I had assumed.
Oh, the thing with the paralysis now is though, it underspeeds the Araquanid, as we've seen from the speed stats here with the grassy terrain recovery going on. So now it's pretty tough because you can't leech dive freely into this arena because the Incineroar threatens a strong Flare Blitz into your oh, he gets the full power. No, so he doesn't kill. So he doesn't kill the.
I do think that like Flare Blitz probably would not have done enough to the Araquanid given its ability, but perhaps a Dark type move would have been enough. We don't get to see what Duckpond locked in. Maybe it was even a fake out. We don't know thanks to that paralysis, alas.
Yeah. Anyway, we do see this arena going down here. Araquanid, I mean, I would say it's fairly healthy again after a little bit of after the huge power whip coming out. And I think we still have at least one turn of Trick Room left. So Incineroar normally not being able to protect itself. Duckpond has to have a good switch into that Araquanid, or he just have to give up on his Incineroar and try to win with the remaining 2 Pokemon.
Yes, and we see Duckpond go back out into that Urshifu. Kean locks in his moves so quickly that I didn't really have time to see what he went for. It looks like a liquidation into the Incineroar, which is paralyzed again. Very, very unlucky. But that is going to be a KO for JamieKean here. While the Porygon 2 goes for a simple tri-attack into that Urshifu. And it will be curious to see what Duckpond's final Pokemon is here. Close Combat also picking up a KO on the P2 though. It's possible that he was so desperately trying to get rid of the P2 because he has something like the Lando in the back that really does not want to be taking an Ice Beam. I suppose we'll get to see that soon.
Yeah, I mean, something like Celesteela in the back could still win now that there's no Alec here. I mean, if you look at the Pokemon here, but if it's the Lando, I mean, yeah, we do
It is the
we do see
Landorus.
the Lando, so it's kind of tough now because Willaboom just threatens the Urshifu. It probably, I mean, it will probably be able to hang on from a Sludge Bomb, so Urshifu is threatened. Liquidation will do a lot of damage to Landorus as well, even at -1 because of the stab and the water bubble ability boosting the
damage, yeah.
The
A
damage
protect from the Urshifu, correctly predicting the glide going into that slot, but a slug bomb from the Landorus. I'm curious to see how much that does. Ooh, not really close to a KO, unfortunately for Duckpond. While that liquidation easily picks up the Lando.
Yeah, I really like the Araquanid here. I really like to see it. I mean, it only attacked at -1 and dealt like 80% to Incineroar, 100% to Landorus, so it definitely put in the work here. And yeah, I think it was a really nice adaptation. We discussed it in between games that in this game it kind of comes down to what those players do with the information that they have gotten. And JamieKean was like, okay, Alec, you won me game 1, so I probably scared off the Meteor Beam Celesteela that's threatening my Araquanid. And yeah, it worked perfectly fine.
Yes, and we see the Grassy Glide here taking that final KO for JamieKean. Another quite commanding victory. I have to conclude from this that Duckpond's team seemed to struggle with getting rid of that Porygon 2 a bit. It was quite the thorn in his side.
Yeah, I mean, even though he had this Urshifu with stab fighting, Porygon is just so tanky. And the Incineroar switch turn 1 really allowed him to elevate this tankiness even more.
Yes. But at the same time, I have to respect Duckpond's decision to go with the Landorus game 2. I think in his position, I would likely have done the same after seeing how well that Aleki worked out for JamieKean in game 1. So very understandable choice.
Yeah, and now we do see the results. We've seen that the players before, the Jonas and Polar Bear, played their game, and the Haoli Heat won this week because JamieKean just won our streamed match, and Polar Bear against Jonas won as well. So really great. Obviously really nice matches going on here, and I'm really happy for the Holy Heat because my friend Baker, who gave me his great team, is part of this team and won his week as well. So really nice to see. Really great stuff.
Congratulations to the Haoli Heat, and shoutouts also to Bait.
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of fun watching the set. I think it was a really interesting contrast to the Series 13 game that we have seen before, where we do see those really strong Pokemon with Dynamax and stuff, and we still see a lot of strategy going on there, but just the Series 13, is a bit centralizing around this Dynamax, I would say. It's all about getting the most out of your Dynamax, while in Spikemuth we did see a lot more room for pivot options with Willaboom and Incineroar. So, yeah, really awesome.
Yeah, well done to both players. And we will be back after a short break, so don't go anywhere.
Yeah, with a lot of with more Series 13 actions, I believe. And yeah, see you soon.